If you're all familiar with the Apple ecosystem and haven't been living under a rock for the last 12 months or so, you'll know that when Apple introduced their iPhone 12 lineup last fall, they also announced a brand new charging technology called MagSafe, where you could charge your iPhone 12 up to twice as fast as you previously could with normal Qi charging. Inexplicably, while competitors such as Hyper and Anker rushed to release their own MagSafe compatible battery packs, Apple waited almost 9 months before releasing theirs. So the question is now, is it worth the $99 price tag that Apple's currently charging for this battery pack, and should you buy it or wait for something else since the iPhone 13 is just around the corner? In this video, we'll take a look at the MagSafe battery pack that Apple just released, whether you should buy it or not, and if it has any advantages or disadvantages over the current competition. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we talk about all things tech, particularly those smaller tech items that help increase your productivity, streamline your workflow, and make your life easier. So I am a sucker for a good battery pack. I don't know why, but every time they go on sale on Amazon, I just have to buy it. Particularly if it's an Anker. I don't know what it is, but I see an Anker battery pack go on sale, and even though I may have 4 other 10,000 milliamp hour batteries, I'm just like, I need this one. Problem with all the batteries that I currently have is that you need a cable in order to charge your device. So whether it's Lightning, USB-C, micro USB, anytime you bring the battery pack with you, you also need to bring the cable. Sometimes you might bring the wrong cable, you might forget your cable. So when Apple announced MagSafe, it was really exciting because now we have the potential of wireless battery packs where no cables were involved. There are many different quote-unquote MagSafe battery charging options out there right now, namely Hyper, Anker, Aukey. They've all got their own version of the MagSafe battery. The problem with all of them is that none of them are officially licensed by Apple, meaning they can't really take advantage of the MagSafe technology that Apple includes as proprietary in their iPhones. So my wife often finds herself losing charge on her phone because, unlike me, she's not obsessive about charging it throughout the day. And she wanted a battery pack that was kind of simple and easy to take with her. And the fact that there were now wireless charging packs made it even easier because she didn't have to remember to bring a cable. So a few months ago, I bought her the Hyper battery pack, which retails for $39. And she's actually been really happy with it. Now, I've been looking into wireless battery packs for myself, but up to now, I haven't really found anything that has really caught my eye because I've really been waiting for something that would take advantage of the MagSafe technology. I've been using the MagSafe charger pretty much ever since it came out. I love it because it charges my phone faster than I can with a Qi charger. It's pretty small and out of the way. It attaches very securely now that I have a MagSafe compatible case. The only disadvantage I see with the MagSafe charger is that you need a 20-watt adapter to take advantage of the full charging speed. Otherwise, it's going to charge your device much slower. So Apple's MagSafe battery pack came out a couple weeks ago at a price of $99, way more expensive than the current offerings that are out there from other companies. Also, when Apple revealed the specs of the wireless charger, people started to get pretty disappointed. So let's quickly unbox the MagSafe battery and then we'll take a look at how it compares to the Hyper. So we're gonna go ahead and unbox the battery pack just to see how it looks. It's pretty basic, there's not a whole lot to it. I've actually already taken off the little pull tab at the top and I've looked at it already, so I've sort of unboxed this before, but we're just gonna see what the experience is like. So, take it out, take it out of the paper. Set that aside, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Very clean looking, really not a lot to it. You've got the lightning port and the indicator on the back, which is currently not lighting up. And inside, we've just got some papers, some regulatory things, nothing really to look at. And so this is it. This is the MagSafe battery pack. So if you put them side by side, you won't see the differences right away, but after a while you do start to notice that the Apple pack is a tiny bit wider and a tiny bit shorter, whereas the Hyper is a little bit longer and maybe a little bit narrower. When you stack them up next to each other, however, you do notice the difference in thickness. You can kind of see that, see it on the edges. And then you have the charging ports. So the Hyper has USB-C, whereas the Apple has Lightning. Apple only has this indicator right here to indicate the charge of the battery, but Hyper does have this button that you can press. Now, the cool thing about the MagSafe battery is that when it's attached to the phone, the battery widget on the iPhone will tell you how much power is left. So that's one unique feature of having the MagSafe over the Hyper. Now, I know that the MagSafe battery comes discharged when you first get it, so I'm going to go ahead and charge it up right now, and then we'll go ahead and test it and see how it compares to the Hyper in terms of performance. All right, so now that we've done the unboxing, let's see how the Apple battery stacks up against the Hyper and how it just compares to other batteries that are similar. So first of all, we have to talk about price. The Hyper comes in at a very reasonable $39. So again, the Apple is not officially licensed by Apple, so it's not an official MagSafe product, but it still does the job. It's a good product, and for the money, definitely will find it hard to beat. The Apple battery comes in at a hefty $99. Pretty typical for an Apple product, but this is a little bit overpriced in my opinion. I could see this going for somewhere more in the $79, $69 price. At $99, it's kind of getting out of the affordability range of most people, and I think unless you're just a diehard Apple fan, this is gonna be kind of a hard sell for most people. Again, if you're someone who's not very tech savvy and you just kind of walk into an Apple store and you see this hanging there, you know, maybe $99 isn't that much of an impulse buy for you. But if you're someone who does a lot of research like I do, and you kind of look at all the specs and you kind of geek out on everything, then this is definitely not gonna be an easy purchase for you. The next thing we're gonna look at between these two batteries is the capacity. So the Hyper comes in at 5,000 milliamp hours, which is pretty typical for a battery of this size, especially since it's wireless. You know, you're not gonna get a huge amount of charge out of this kind of compact battery. The Apple, meanwhile, comes in at a paltry 1460 milliamp hours. However, that doesn't tell the whole story. The Hyper battery charges at 3.62 volts, while the Apple battery charges at 7.62 volts. So you're getting twice the voltage in the Apple battery as you do with Hyper. What that leads to is an efficiency of the capacity of the battery. So even though you've got the lower capacity in the Apple battery, you're still going to be getting a similar charge to the Hyper. Maybe not as much as you would with the Hyper, but you're going to get more than that 1460 capacity leads you to believe. The next thing we're going to take a look at is the charging speed. So the Hyper claims to charge at 7.5 watts, which is the speed that you get with most Qi chargers. Apple limits their capacity to 7.5 watts, whereas with other Android phones, you can get up to 10, 15 watts. Now, with Apple's MagSafe charger, like I said before, you can charge up to 15 watts if you pair it with a 20-watt charger. With the MagSafe battery alone, you're only getting 5 watts of charge. But if you do pair it with the 20-watt charger and leave it connected, you are going to be charging your phone at a full 15 watts, which is essentially going to charge it up faster than the Hyper, but you're going to be stuck using the wired connection. So if you have to go out somewhere and you don't have time to sit there and let your phone charge with the 20-watt charger, the Hyper is probably going to be the better option for you. So you may have seen some other reviewers note that it is pretty interesting that with the Apple battery, you can actually reverse charge the battery with the phone when you have the phone plugged in. You can't do that with the Hyper. So that's kind of one feature that the Apple battery has, kind of unique to that specific case. Also, as I did mention before, you do get the notification that you are using MagSafe when you put the battery on your phone, and you get that little icon at the bottom. It'll also show up in the battery widget so you can keep track of the charge of the battery. The Hyper doesn't do that. The Hyper will only show you the status of the battery if you press the button on the front, and you can see how many lights light up. So it doesn't tell you exactly how much charge is left, but you can get a pretty good idea. And as far as the weight goes, it's not a huge difference between the two, but the Hyper weighs in at 150 grams, where the Apple weighs in at 114 grams. So if you're kind of taking this with you, you are going to feel a slight weight difference with the Apple versus the Hyper. I don't think for most people it's going to make a huge difference, but if you're someone who kind of likes to keep things, you know, on the lighter side, then the Apple is definitely going to be your preferred battery. The Apple does claim to have built-in charge management features. So you will notice, for example, I have the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and when you put it on the back, it tells you that it can only charge your phone up to 90% before it's going to shut down. You don't get any such notifications with the Hyper, so I'm assuming basically just once you've used the battery up, then that's it. There's no charge management that comes into effect. And, you know, aesthetically, the Hyper comes in black, the Apple comes in white. Not a huge deal for most people, but if you're someone who cares about aesthetics, that's something to consider as well. So now we're going to take a look at how the battery works with MagSafe cases on the back of the phone. So I have an iPhone 12 Pro Max with a Spigen case that has the MagSafe compatibility on the back. I'm not someone who usually uses my phones without a case because I tend to drop them all the time and I want to keep them protected. I don't think most people use their phones without a case, but I know some people do kind of go with the naked look. So putting the Apple right on the back is very easy. You just slap it on and you'll notice there isn't a lot of wiggle room. Like I'm really trying to push this and it does move, but it's a pretty solid connection. I'm not sure how it would be if I took the case off, but I can test that as well. But it would take a lot of force to move this, and if I'm shaking it, it's really not going much of anywhere. You can see with the 12 Pro Max, it does take up, you know, almost the whole back up to the camera bump. And then you can see kind of how thick it is with the case on. So I definitely do feel some weight. If you're someone that has smaller hands, this might be an issue. For me, it's not too bad, but I wouldn't want to have this on here all the time because it definitely is fairly hefty. So with the Hyper battery, again, it just slaps on, but I definitely notice some more give and take in this battery. It's much easier to push around. It's not really giving me any resistance at all. If I'm shaking the battery, it's not coming off. But, you know, it definitely does move around a bit more, so I could see this maybe falling more easily than the Apple one does. You can see kind of how thick it is on the back. Takes up about the same amount of space that the Apple battery does, and you can see it does stick out a bit more. I can definitely feel the weight more with this than I can with the Apple battery. Coupled with the case, this definitely turns into a pretty heavy object. The other thing to mention about both of these batteries is that neither come with a charging cable, so you will of course have to have a lightning cable, USB-C cable with the Hyper. With the MagSafe battery pack, in order to take advantage of the full charging speed, you will need to have a USB-C to lightning cable, which comes in all of the iPhone 12s now, so that shouldn't be a huge problem. If you have an iPhone 12, you should have one lying around already. So for those of you who are interested in how this goes on without the case, I do have it on the back of my phone without the case on. Still feels really solid, but it does have a little bit more give and take than it did with the Spigen case on, so that's kind of interesting. I don't know if the Spigen has extra magnets in it or something to give it a little bit more force, but just, you know, FYI, if you're going without a case, it is going to move around a bit more. And now with the Hyper, when I'm putting this on the back of my phone, it moves around a lot. Like I don't even really have to do much to move it around. And it's literally falling off my phone when I shake it. So, you know, if you're going without a case, this is something to consider. I'm assuming because of the extra magnets that are in the Spigen case, it gives it a little bit more oomph to hold the battery on. So definitely if you're going with the Hyper, you're gonna want some kind of case on it to keep it more secure. So when it comes right down to it, we're talking about battery packs. Not a huge deal for most people. Like I said, I'm kind of a geek over battery packs, so I kind of obsess over them a little bit. But for most people, they're gonna buy a battery pack, probably throw it into their desk or bag, maybe use it every once in a while, and then they'll kind of forget about it, never think about it again. If you have an iPhone 12, or I'm assuming with the upcoming iPhone 13s or whatever they're gonna call them, then the MagSafe battery is somewhat of a compelling buy. Again, it is really expensive. I wish they would drop down the price a little bit more, but it does give you the advantage of seeing what your charge level is. You can charge your phone and the battery at the same time, or wirelessly charge your battery, or vice versa using MagSafe. So you could potentially get a faster charge if you have the right charging brick for it. I know my wife has been using the Hyper battery with her iPhone 12 and she's really liked it, hasn't had any issues with it. I also like the fact that you can charge it with USB-C. The Apple battery, like I said, only charges with Lightning, which can be kind of annoying because that means you've got to take another cable with you and you've got to remember to take your 20-watt charger if you do want to get those faster charging speeds. So there are some concessions there. As to whether I'm going to keep the MagSafe battery, I'm not 100% sure right now. I'm going to do a little bit more testing with it. I've got a little bit of time to play around with it before I have to decide if I want to bring it back or not. So I'll let you guys know what I think of it for a future video. Let me know what you think. Do you think this is something that you're going to be picking up? Do you think it's just like way too overpriced? Do you already have another wireless battery that you like to use? And if so, mention it in the comments because if it's something I haven't heard of before, I'd love to check it out. As always, please remember to like and subscribe if this content is useful for you, as it helps us to grow the channel. We really appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.